everybody, and thank you for joining our Observability Insights webcast series. Today's presentation is about flexible monitoring that meets your unique business requirements with OCI Stack Monitoring. And our presenter today is Aaron Reimel, Principal Product Manager. Aaron, over to you.
Today, what I'm going to go over is just give you an introduction about what is stack monitoring at a base level, so everybody's kind of up to speed, but then dive deeper, and I'll spend the majority of the time reviewing how stack monitoring helps meet those unique business requirements, those things that, is more than just is Tomcat healthy. And then finally, we'll talk about how easy it is to go and get started with that. So with that said, let's do this. So I want to first begin to give you kind of that overall landscape, right, of Oracle's observability and management services. It's this cloud-native platform that brings together all those telemetry, traces, metrics, and logs for monitoring and analysis. And the solution consists of integrated services that can monitor your resources across hybrid and multi-cloud environments as well, because we know that it's great if you want to host everything in OCI. But if you've got some stuff running on-prem, we want to make sure that that works for you as well. And these services are all built on top of those foundational services, such as OCI monitoring and OCI notification service, just to name a couple, right? But in this search, in particular, in this session, what we're going to do is we're going to cover stack monitoring. So stack monitoring helps you answer those essential questions, right? What am I monitoring in my environment? Is everything up? Do I have a performance degradation? Am I running out of CPU or memory or storage problems? Is the performance of one resource impacting that entire application stack, right? How do I correlate that across the application? And of course, we support those heterogeneous environments, and we focus on Oracle apps and technologies. So a quick overview of what stack monitoring is. It lets you proactively monitor that application and its underlying application stack, including the application servers, databases, and hosts, because context of the entire application stack is key. You can easily set up monitoring in a few minutes, leveraging that single-click discovery UI that discovers an entire application stack and its topology. We have native out-of-the-box support for applications including EBS and PeopleSoft, or application stack technologies that include WebLogic Server, SOA, OHS, Tomcat, just to name a few. And yesterday we released standalone support for OHS. I mean, things are coming all the time. Support for database monitoring, including Oracle database systems and SQL servers. Host monitoring for Linux, Windows, and Solaris. But what's fun is we give you that curated set of metrics of each of these resource types, and built-in monitoring UIs to allow you to quickly monitor after discovery. And one of our key monitoring UIs is called StackView. StackView gives you that quick assessment of an application's health, such as EBS or PeopleSoft, and it shows that application's key load and response metrics, performance and utilization metrics from the app server, database, hosts, all in a single place. And we'll see a little bit of that later. Alarms is an important part of monitoring, and we offer a best practice recommendations for setting those up to get you started and avoid those outages and performance issues and help keep you out of that war room. Finally, stack monitoring can monitor your resources across your hybrid environments, right? It's great if you're in OCI, but if you've got something running on premise, we've got you. If it's running in another cloud, we've got you as well. All of these features are included in what is now referred to as Stack Monitoring Standard Edition. So monitoring those, why we're here, monitoring those unique business requirements with Stack Monitoring and the Enterprise Edition. It builds on that current set of core features that I just discussed in the Standard Edition. Stack Monitoring Enterprise Edition provides you that advanced flexible monitoring capabilities required for monitoring those unique mission-critical applications. And extensible monitoring. With the wide variety of applications and technology stacks, we know that ops teams, I've been there, have requirements to monitor conditions specific to their environment. And that extensible monitoring is about supporting the ability to add those custom metrics and monitor anything outside of what's built in. Monitoring UIs provided inside of Stack Monitoring already. Gives you that consistent look and feel. Smarter monitoring. This is about providing that insight into your monitored resources. An example would be using technology such as machine learning to provide insights into those performance issues. Is the behavior of your custom app expected, or is it anomalous? Can I correlate this problem to an event or something that happened somewhere else in the stack? And scalable monitoring. This focuses on features that eliminate repetitive tasks often required as an enterprise grows. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. I don't want to be the secretary for my own application, right? I want to be, this sounds terrible, I want to be in control, right? I don't want to have to do all those little repetitive tasks all day long. So let's begin with metric extensions. Metric extensions extend that out-of-the-box metric set provided by Stack Monitoring to meet those use cases required when monitoring those unique IT environments. So I mentioned this before, right? In my previous experience. As a DBA, I frequently leveraged custom metrics to meet unique business requirements. Right? One example was I had a set of DBMS jobs. And those DBMS jobs were expected to be executed on all of my databases. I had a bunch of them. But they were supposed to be executed on each of these databases on a specific schedule. So then I used custom metrics like a metric extension to be able to gather that information and ensure that, check whether the job is running and that the job is running on the cadence that I'm expecting. And so using custom metrics like metric extensions, right? That gives me that freedom where I'm not just checking on my systems all day long, are things working like they're supposed to be? I'm alerted when they're not. And then I spend more of my time focusing on improving performance. And that's where I should be. So I'll provide a demonstration on how to create a metric extension here in a minute. But first, I want to review the process. Metric extensions leverage the collection methods by resource type. So like we would use SQL for Oracle Database, or maybe JMX for WebLogic. And it's easy to get started. We give you that fill in the blank UI, and you choose your resource type, your collection method, collection frequency, then give it the command or script that you want to be executed. The output of the metric extension is organized into dimensions and metrics. And the dimension is a qualifier of the metric, right? So if I was to use file system utilization to help describe this, the dimension is the file system name, such as UO1, where the metric portion is 90%, right? 90% utilized. And remembering that the metric portion has to be numeric. So metric extensions leverage those monitoring credentials that were provided when the resource was discovered. So if I discovered a Oracle Container DB and I provided DBSNMP, well, then DBSNMP is the credentials that's going to be used to collect that metric extension. And the metric data then is all stored inside of OCI monitoring. That allows you to go in and create alarms and know, if you have any problems. Metric extension charts, then, those will automatically be added to any resource homepage once it's enabled. And you can always add it to the enterprise summary and dashboards. So let's look deeper at this process. So the first step is to define your metric extension. So you create a metric extension first by defining the metric query or script to be used. Then next, you use the UI and you specify the name, the resource type, the collection method, the script, and other details I described a bit earlier. But once a metric extension has been defined, now it's time to create and then test that guy. So creating a metric extension saves that metric. And from this point, you can continue to develop the metric or head off to lunch and come back and pick up where you left off. It's important to always test a metric extension against a non-production resource. We've all been in those situations. Hey guys, this is going to be just fine. I'm just going to run this against production. And then inevitably it isn't, and someone gets a call. So always test against a non-production resource. But during this phase, the metric is deployed to the management agent and the command is executed. Those results are then sent to OCI and retrieved for display in the UI. Now, during the test phase, you can review the results, right? All the feedback that you get from after that script has been executed. If you're unsatisfied with it, you can continue to edit that command, update the script, retest the metric extension. You can test against the same or a different resource. But remember, always test against non-production resources, folks. Once you're satisfied with the results, now it's time to publish the metric extension. A published metric extension is ready for general consumption, right? So as a result, you can't edit this thing anymore. Enabling the metric on a resource is your final step. And when enabling the metric on a resource, the metric extension will be pushed to the management agent and then immediately begin collecting that metric data. Stack Monitoring will automatically show that metric extension chart or show the charts for the metric extension on the resource homepages, and you can go create those alarms against your newly created metric extensions. So Aaron, you've talked a lot about metric extensions. Let's see how we can do it in real life. All right. So to create a metric extension, we first navigate to the metric extension tab, right? And then, as you would expect, you click Create Metric Extension. So from this slide out, this is that fill-in-the-blank UI that I described earlier, right? And this helps guide us through that process of creating that metric extension. So first, we'll give it a name, DB wait time. Make it look pretty with wait time. Now, we can provide a description, but this is a demonstration, so we'll skip that. Moving down. So this is going to be against an Oracle database. So from the dropdown, we'll come down here and select non-container DB. And we're going to change the collection method from OS command to SQL. And the collection frequency will update from 15 to 5 minutes. Okay, so for the query, the SQL query, we can either type that guy in right here, or we can upload a SQL file. It's clearly much easier to just upload a SQL file. So we'll click the radio button, drag and drop our file, and we now have that. All right. So with the SQL file uploaded, it's now time to define those metrics and dimensions we talked about, right? So our script is going to return 3 columns: the instance name, the wait class, and the wait time. So we've got to go define each of these. So first we'll scroll down. We'll give it a name, instance name. Once again, make it pretty. Now, this is a dimension, and it has a value type of string. All right, instance name is a string. Let's add another one. Wait class. Let's again make it pretty. It is a dimension. It is a string. And now we'll add our metric. Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll add our DB wait time. DB wait time. This time, remember, it is not a dimension. So it defaults, right? It's already defaulted a number because a metric has to be a number, and we'll give it our unit of seconds. Okay. So from this, we're now ready to create and test our metric extension. So we'll click Create and Test. You can see it's been successfully created. All right. And now we test. So clicking the dropdown, we select our resource and we'll click Test. Okay, testing a metric extension can take a few minutes, but once it completes, remember we said that those results can be displayed, and this is where you can go in and review it. Here we can see the DB wait times, the instance name, and the wait class are all returned. And we can decide at this point, do we like these results? Does this look accurate? If it doesn't, remember, we can come back to this point and we can say update. We can go change our query, change the resource we're testing against, etc. But this looks good to me, so we'll go ahead and publish this. All right. So this pop-up ensures you want to publish it. Remember, once we publish it, we can no longer edit this metric extension. So we're good. We're going to go ahead and publish it. And we see now that this metric extension has been published in a couple different places. So with it now published, remember it's ready for general consumption. So let's go ahead and enable this on an Oracle database. Click the action button, enable. We'll select our resource, choose this non-container DB, and click enable unselected resource. From this point, it's going to say, hey, are you sure that you want to enable this on your database? Yes, I am sure. Now, just like before, enabling on a resource, this can take a few minutes. But once it completes, we can see that it was successful. Close our window. And here we can now see that this metric extension has been enabled on one resource. Clicking this count gives us a slide out. Excuse me, if this was enabled on 50 resources, we would see 50 different resources here. But here we can see that it's been enabled on one resource. And from this point, you can click that and go to its homepage and start waiting for that metric extension data to come rolling in. So with that, let's get back to the presentation. All right, the second feature, baselines and anomalies. So where this really comes in is, I mean, this applies to any resource type that's out of the box, but being able to do this against, those unique business requirements is where things really get helpful, right? So for key performance metrics, Stack Monitoring will automatically calculate its baseline behavior using machine learning algorithms. And baselines they're that expected range of values for the metric. If a metric is outside of the baseline, it'll be flagged as anomalous in those charts, right? These little orange plot points that you can kind of see here. And those help identify if the behavior is different and could be a sign of potential problems. And the homepage on the chart highlights several anomalous metrics. And we see those, once again, by the orange plot points. And hovering over any of these data points gives you, more context of where it is inside of that baseline. Now, pro tip, I don't know if you guys have tried this, but you can actually select and deselect dimensions of a metric inside of the Stack Monitoring charts. Once you hide all but one dimension, and it is a baseline enabled metric, those are indicated by a little plus sign, you will be able to see that baseline on the chart for that dimension. So one thing to remember that once you discover a resource, it does take Stack Monitoring at least a couple hours to gather enough metric data to calculate those baselines. And as time progresses, those values become more fine-tuned. Application stack extensibility. All right, so Stack Monitoring allows for that single-click discovery of an entire EBS application stack, right? This automatically creates the topology, those associations between the application, within the application. And this topology can then be used to understand the overall health of an application and give you that navigation across the application stack, right? Being able to see, here we can see that this EBS, it contains a concurrent processing node, or that it uses a host, or that it uses a container DB, right? It helps build all of that topology for you. But an EBS application stack is more than this. It's more than just those WebLogic servers and an Oracle database. Stack Monitoring's extensibility features allows for monitoring from other services to be consolidated by importing those into Stack Monitoring. Importing resources into Stack Monitoring allows for the application's topology to be completed by creating associations between the imported resources and Stack Monitoring resources. This reduces troubleshooting time by providing access to all resources and their availability and performance metrics of the entire application stack, which now includes the load balancers, application servers, databases, and even storage, right? All in one place. And once a resource has been imported, Stack Monitoring will create a homepage with that availability and those performance metrics and configuration details, and be able to, show all of those open alarms. So let's see how to import a load balancer. Spoiler alert, it is really easy. So let's go here. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to enhance an EBS application's topology by importing the OCI load balancer that services the WebLogic's Oracle Application Fusion Middleware Cluster, or OAFM. So to do it, we're going to roll down here to import load balancer, or import resources, rather, and select import resources. Okay, so once again, like everywhere else, we have a slide out that helps give you that fill in the blank discovery UI. So importing this is easy, right? So we're going to simply select the OCI namespace. Here we've got OCI load balancer. We're going to choose that. Now, I know that the load balancers that I'm about to import within this compartment are all production load balancers, right? So we're going to come down here and click Advanced Options. And then we're going to go ahead and tag this thing. So let's give it an Oracle Standard Environment Prod. So now we can associate this while we're doing the import. We're going to apply the tag. Hit Add Tag. All right. And that's it. We're going to click Import Resources. And we can see our job has been accepted. Okay. It is in progress. All right. Perfect. Our job has succeeded. So clicking on the work request name will give us a list of all the load balancers that were just imported. So here we can see that we've got 2 load balancers, and clicking on one of these will take you to the resource name. So we know that this is the one we want. And now it's taken me to this home page that Stack Monitoring has created for me. So this homepage provides those details into the health and the performance of that load balancer. So we can come over, like look at the performance charts. All right, we can already see data has been populated and it's been ingested. So now let's go over to topology. And this is really, I'm sorry, and go over to topology. All right, so this is why we're here, right? Is to complete that application topology. So let's enhance it by creating that relationship between the OAFM WebLogic cluster and our imported load balancer. So we're going to click Add Association. All right. This load balancer is used by, we're going to come down here. We're going to choose WebLogic cluster. All right. And OAFM, there's our cluster we're looking for, and click Add Resources. Okay. So now we can see that this load balancer is used by this WebLogic cluster, right? So now if you go in and you see that your traffic is moving, there's nothing, your WebLogic cluster is doing nothing. It's now as simple as being able to see, oh, well, let's go take a look at this load balancer and simply click the link. And if you need to get there, we give you a little breadcrumb page, or a little breadcrumb that will take you to the OCI services page where you can go, adjust the pool members and do the different work, right? So all of this is just a simple click, click, click. You don't ever have to go searching for what was my load balancer called that services this thing again. It's all there for you. So while we're here, let's go ahead and for ease of use, let's add another association. Used by, we're going to choose this time the EBS instance and click Add Association. Once again, it's that simple. If we accidentally make a mistake, people do, we're human, you could just click the little button and remove that association. But it's that simple to be able to come in here and create that relationship between the load balancer and the resources that have a dependency on it. Minimize that. All right. Monitor any process as a resource. So the 4th process we'll discuss is that ability to monitor any process as a custom resource in Stack Monitoring. So if your business has a requirement to monitor a unique application that's running on a host, Stack Monitoring helps you meet that need with process-based custom resources. This is done by defining the processes that make up your custom application that's running on that host. So here's what you do. You first begin by identifying the processes that make up your application. You can identify those processes using a filter expression that contains like the process command line and the name of the user that's running the process. With your processes defined, you identify the hosts that these processes run on. In other words, where's my custom application running, right? It's running on this host, and this host. And that's it. Stack monitoring will create a resource using these processes and will monitor the custom application for status, CPU, and memory usage. And monitoring of your custom application begins immediately. And Stack monitoring will create that homepage, just like we did for the load balancer that you saw in the presentation, right? And it'll give you that same status, open alarms, performance charts that include anomaly detection, CPU and on anomaly detection on CPU and memory utilization. And once again, those anomalies, if they're found, they'll be shown with those little orange plot points. But from this homepage, you can then associate this custom application with other resources to easily identify, say, the host that it's running on, or the database maybe that it's writing to, or the load balancer that's servicing it, right? Just as we did before, it's super easy. All right, so we've talked about a lot of cool things. How do you get started? So enabling the service, once it's easy. The onboarding process will create the necessary groups and users to begin using Stack Monitoring. You first navigate to Stack Monitoring. We're located under Application and Performance Monitoring within Observability and Management. Next, navigate to the compartment where you want to create your single pane of glass for monitoring. Remember, you can monitor all of your resources here, running on premise or in another cloud provider. But once you've navigated to your compartment, simply click Enable Stack Monitoring. And within minutes, the OCI Stack Monitoring service will be enabled and you'll be ready to begin monitoring your first host. And Stack Monitoring recommends always start monitoring with your host first. And I mean, this little video that's been running here, that was a real-time capture of how long it takes to get started. So it took less time to enable the service than it did for me to explain what it does. Enabling Enterprise Edition. So before you can start using all of these fun features, you got to first enable the Enterprise Edition. So some of these features, you can set it on an individual resource level, while others are compartment-wide. For example, Enterprise Edition can be applied to an individual resource. If I have 100 resources in a compartment and 50 of them I want Enterprise Edition, you can do that. Any number of those resources can have Enterprise Edition applied. Extensibility, now that's applied at a compartment level. The tenant admin can come in and choose whether or not to allow that extensibility feature, importing those resources into Stack Monitoring. So let's take a quick look at those. For existing Stack Monitoring resources, the Enterprise Edition can be enabled from the UI. Enterprise Edition license can be enabled on one or many within a compartment at a time. And applying a license to a composite like PeopleSoft automatically applies that to all of its members, like its WebLogic server, PIA, application server domain, etc. But when adding a new resource, Stack Monitoring gives you that ability to configure the license during the discovery workflow if you want to override it. But to make it easy, you can, from the license UI, you could just say, by default, I want the license auto assignment to be, say, Enterprise Edition for that entire compartment. And once you configure the license auto assignment, Stack Monitoring will then default to that license during all future discoveries within the compartment. To use extensibility features from the license UI, you got to first enable the extensibility license at the compartment level. This allows you to start importing OCI services like load balancers we discussed earlier. License metering begins when you import your first resource. So it's not a charge of just enabling, it's a charge on the resource once it's imported. So I've covered a lot, but the overall observability and management group is constantly releasing new features, new services, and to keep up with the dynamic world of change that we're introducing, don't forget to follow us. You can find us on oracle.com observability. You can follow us on X, formerly Twitter, Look for us on LinkedIn, where you can find more learning opportunities such as these. But today we reviewed features that allow you to monitor those unique business requirements in your environment. And with Stack Monitoring Enterprise Edition, we continue to release new features and support for resources all the time. To keep up with what's new, in particular with Stack Monitoring, scan this QR code. It's going to give you a link to our doc, our release notes, blogs, live labs. The Stack Monitoring live labs, that's where you can jump in and try out the demo environment that you just saw earlier today.
Aaron, have a great day. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everybody.